Hi, everyone. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, everyone. Again, this is Christina. You're watching Black Tea News. And today, my title it may seem a little clickbaity, but I believe it's the truth. And I did try to reach out because we kind of comment, but I'm going to go through my reasoning. So last night, I was on the show Let It Rip, and we talked about President Trump's lawsuit. It's a class action lawsuit, so he's not the only person. He's like leading it, but there's other people who can join in about the big tech censorship. That's not the only thing, but we also talked about critical race theory, and so that was like the big segment I was really excited to talk about, but we didn't get a chance to really go back and forth because we were really restricted on time, so I didn't get a chance to reply to some of the things that the other panelists said. So I'm going to walk through that a little bit, and I got some clips from it that I want to talk about, particularly something that Adam Hollier, who's a Michigan state senator, he's a Democrat, and some comments that he made about kind of denying some of the things that we see or hear about critical race theory being taught, but his like flex about, when people have interviews, they'll really always try to shift the conversation in the way that they want to go. Like, I don't want to talk about critical race theory. What I want to talk about is this injustice that I see here. And so they really try to flip it. So, so I think that's what they tried to do. But there's a problem when you keep trying to talk about all these sort of disparities that are surrounding us, because you're making the implication that someone is responsible for that. And so the question is, if you're going to, his example was, what I am hearing is that Black kids are kicked out of schools or suspended and not in advanced classes. So, and he said, if you look at it, it's racism. So who are the racists? Are you saying it's the administrators? Are you saying it's the teachers? Who are the ones who are racist, who are kicking out these Black kids and keeping them from succeeding? Who are the racists then? So we have to ask that question. I'll go through the Let It Rip clips in a bit. Before I hop into it, that's going to be the first thing I cover. I got other things I want to talk about. Tucker Carlson alleged that the NSA was spying on them. They kind of gave a denial, not quite a denial. Turns out that it seems like that's pretty true. I'm going to touch on that, but I also want to talk about my dust up with this comic book creator and his blatant, racism or prejudiceness, I guess you would say, against conservatives. And I don't really understand why people find it so fashionable to dunk on the population at large when they're trying to sell a product. Like, they have a niche market, I guess, but but you're still like insulting people within that niche market. So I'll get more into detail with it. But first things first, please visit blacktnews.com. Check out other content that I have there. Follow me on other platforms. I'm on, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. So find me in all those places. Twitter. All my handles are the same at Black Tea News, except on Twitter, it's at True Black Tea. Also, please visit the website to check out merchandise. I got a new thing to show you guys. You guys are really gonna like this. Bam. Be better, not better. So get that for someone in your life. Be better, not better. So we got that. I do have some merch with my logo on it. You can get like a cute little black tea mug or something. And I got a t-shirt and stuff there. But go ahead and check out the website. I got some new stuff on there. Also, if you would like to donate, you can do so by going to blacktnews.com/donate, or you can do so via PayPal and Cash App. I will end up having a PO box. Someone suggested that yesterday, and I'm like, that's a really good suggestion. And I will have that up for you guys soon. A place where you can send stuff if you want to send stuff. Thank you to everyone who would want to do that, to everyone who has helped. And speaking of people who help, I would also like to thank Brighter Michigan PAC, who is a sponsor. I'm in the studio. Thank you for, I'm being in the studio. If anyone is angry, especially at this segment of the show, can't get me fired because it doesn't work like that. So I thank the PAC. I'm excited about this big fundraiser we're doing for veterans at the end of the month, and they just do some good work. So anyway, let's hop into things really quickly. Our meme of the day. Facebook has decided that they want to stamp out extremism. And one of the things they consider extremism is conspiracy theories, which is funny because the left had a ton of conspiracy theories, including they thought President Trump was stealing mailboxes so he could win the election. Don't you guys think it's crazy? Like, probably like an alternate reality, Trump is still president, and he's probably being impeached right now because they accused him of stealing mailboxes. Like, that's just how silly they were on the left, and they want to act like like there's some people with some wacky theories on the right, but they have some super mainstream wacky ideas, including the whole Russiagate thing. That was all nothing burger. Or mostly nothing burger, I say. So anyway, back to this meme. So people are proud of the label, and so now they're flooded the algorithm with memes. And if you're not familiar with this meme, Trump had an interview with this reporter, and he handed him something, and then he just made that face of confusion, and it became a really big meme. So this was another meme brought to you by my friend Jody Brown. She always has the memes. She's known for the memes. So anyway, let's get to the Let It Rip. So like I said, we didn't have a lot of time, so we couldn't go back and forth. I don't have any clips from the segment about the, you can go watch it online, the full thing online, but about the lawsuit with President Trump and the Facebook. My take was, it's obvious when everything happened that they were coordinating to get rid of him. And Trump has had some off the wall tweets before, but the tweets that they got rid of him for were really peculiar and really silly. And I think I mentioned this the other day, but I did write an article about this at the time. And if you go on blacktnews.com, I do have an article about it that has the tweets in it. And the reasoning was just really silly. Like, they were mind reading and looking into the future, basically. Really, really silly. So, and everyone had their piece, and people were saying some crazy stuff on there. Maybe that's not respectful, but I thought it was like off the wall and just intellectually dishonest, some of the things that they were saying in response to that. But it got worse with the critical race theory stuff. So you're aware, I'm aware, we're all talking, the whole nation is engaged in this conversation. I personally think it's one of the most dangerous things that's going on today. Biden thinks white extremists are the most dangerous people today. It's funny that they say that at the same time when they're like trying to create a collective white identity. That they're saying that white supremacy is dangerous and a big threat. Like, that's what the FBI says. So let's come together and create a collective white identity and address our whiteness. It's so weird. It's so weird that they're like, they claim this is such a threat, and they're doing that because they want to accumulate more power, more government authority. And you hear people kind of making the excuse to expand government authority. I didn't get a chance to mention this when I said I would when I was live, but it went over kind of long. But the Capitol Police are setting up regional headquarters, which I think is really weird. And I think they said that right now they're going to go to like Florida, they're going to go to California, and they said, well, there's and maybe I think New York too. They're like, well, there's a lot of threats around these people, and I'm like, what about Kentucky? What about Rand Paul? Because he almost died a few times, right? So I just think it's weird, and a lot of people. Tim Pool talked about this a lot in his program one day. And that was brought it to a lot of people's attention, and some people were concerned like the defund the police effort was going to follow with a nationalized police force. I don't know about that, but it is a little creepy and a little weird. But they're setting up these branches, I guess, to protect people, but to also keep looking for people who participated in January the 6th. And how they hype that up, and obviously I don't know a person who didn't dim like bad behavior on that day, but the level of which people hype that up is just crazy and more time than I want to spend on it today. So but let's go on to talking about the critical race theory segment. So I talked a lot. I knew we didn't have a lot of time, and I thought the best example was going to be that CNN video that I played yesterday. So not yesterday, it was the day before. I wasn't streaming yesterday. So I'm going to play a clip of what I said, and then I'm going to remind you what that CNN clip was, and then I'll go on.
Okay, I want to get to the second subject, and that is critical race theory. And Christina, I want to come back to you because I don't think people even understand what it is. This is an old theory, more than 40 years old, and there's such an uproar right now, such tension right now, but it's not being taught in any school in Metro Detroit. So why are so many people so angry?
Because the premise of it, well, everyone, please go watch Breonna Keller from CNN. They did a segment about this because they were making it seem like Republicans and parents were just, I don't know, hicks who didn't know any better. So they went to a teacher who does teach it, and she's a high school African-American teacher, and she also claimed that they don't teach it, but she said it's a lens, it's a worldview of how you teach. It started off with legal theory, but if you read critical race theory and introduction, unlike other disciplines of academia, it requires an activist element to it. So teachers, she admitted, can be biased from learning this. And she said that's a good thing because racism is in every institution of our country. So if you already are coming with that premise of that bias, then it's not about teaching honest history. So please, I can't believe CNN aired it. As an editor, I would have never aired something like that because it did not prove their point, would make you more afraid. And their teachers unions are learning this. They're pushing for it. So if it's not going to be like you go to classroom, it says critical race theory 101, but the principles, I'm sure, have already eked through what kids are learning.
Okay, so that's what I said. And so I want to play a bit about what the segment was.
There are thousands of parents all over the U.S. of all races who have been speaking out against CRT, and rightfully so. These are my babies, not yours. If you are embarrassed or ashamed of your skin color, that's your issue, not mine nor my children.
This is a school board meeting in a suburb of Philadelphia, where a small group of very vocal parents are speaking out against critical race theory, or CRT.
We do not want our children to be taught that America is systemically racist.
600,000 people died in the Civil War to end racism and slavery. Don't rewrite factual history or indoctrinate, just present the facts.
In the wake of protests of the murder of George Floyd, Republican politicians have been hyping critical race theory as a threat to the impressionable minds of America's children.
Critical race theory says every white person is a racist. Critical race theory says America is fundamentally racist and irredeemably racist.
So that was one clip, and let's go on.
We wanted to meet the actual people working with actual kids in actual schools. So we talked to Keziah Ridgway, who teaches high school African-American history and discusses CRT in her anthropology class.
Can I just start with a very simple, what is critical race theory?
Yes, critical race theory is not being taught in schools. It is a theory, it is a lens by which to view history and the way that law and race kind of overlaps and connects in society. Can it influence the way that some teachers teach? Yeah, but that's a good thing, right? Because race and racism is literally the building blocks of this country. So how can you not talk about it?
Critical race theory is an academic framework that says racial inequality is perpetuated by the racism embedded in America's laws, not by individual bigotry. But relentless propaganda from some conservatives has created a panic that white people, and especially white children, are under attack.
Critical race theory is basically teaching people to hate our country.
Schools are embracing this ideology and forcing white students and white teachers to be ashamed of their own skin color.
It's not critical race theory, it's racism.
These are systemic things. Ignoring it perpetuates the problem. By acknowledging it, we can find solutions and we can address the problems and the inequality that exists in our country. And so I think teaching it this way actually does the opposite of what these people say it does.
Are you teaching children to hate America?
No, I'm teaching children to question America. And that's what makes a good patriot.
So that was a segment that CNN aired the other day, and I encouraged viewers on Let It Rip to go watch that because, and I talked about it on TikTok and I showed other people it, and they're all like, I'm more concerned about it now than I was before. Like, they just admitted that it was this awful, terrible thing. So again, just FYI, if you guys are watching, please go ahead and share this, tag people. Make sure that you're watching on Facebook, that you like the page, that you are getting notifications for the page, and whether you like to watch me here, like to watch me on YouTube. If you have a YouTube, please subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. So that was what I encouraged everyone to see, because I knew I only had so much time, and that's really the best example that I've seen of like the media trying to gaslight, but at the same time, it's obvious that the stuff is bad, and they're justifying like we have a bias, it teaches a bias, and it's good that it influences teachers and makes them biased because they believe they're right. So what I find, a lot of people who there's people who defend critical race theory who just know nothing about it. And there's people who defend it because they've already been infected with this worldview. And then there's people who maybe not buy into everything, but because of, I don't know, their cult sort of mentality where they just have to defend it because their side is for it. Because obviously if they think that if kids are brainwashed in this way, they're going to grow up, be voters that are going to vote a certain way, and their team is playing for that. So they may not necessarily believe that all teachers are racist or something like that. But those are the things that they have to say because that's what their team requires of them. So does everyone legitimately believe in the whole systemic? It's like magic. They like Expelliarmus, like systemic obvious or something. Like it's just everywhere that they say. I don't know if everyone truly buys into it, but they'll defend it just because they have to. So here's the next part that played right after mine.
Jim, I think many people just want to hear the truth, even if the truth is sometimes hard to hear. If our founding fathers wrote this document professing freedom and faith and yet denied that freedom to the slaves they held, there is hypocrisy in that document. Shouldn't the truth be told about what happened?
Okay, so he asked that of Senator Jim Runstead, and I will play his response in a second. But that was another time I was just kind of squealing myself, like, because Ben Shapiro made a really good point. Like, if you're going to say that the document, either the founders who weren't living up to those principles were hypocritical, or the document itself was hypocritical. Like, it can't be both, because if the documents were like, freedom for all and liberty for all, but the people were like, hey, I got slaves myself, then that makes them hypocritical. If the document encourages slavery and the founders had slaves, then they're neither hypocrites. They're just going by their beliefs, but they're hypocrites because they didn't live up to what they actually wrote. So it's so interesting to me because so many people have this opinion about our founding documents being so racist. But do you know who did not have that opinion? Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass did not have that opinion. And not only did he not have that opinion, he didn't have that opinion in 1852. And I've talked about this speech on my program before. You know that what is 4th of July to a slave speech? It is such a good speech. Go read it. These people who say they want to teach accurate history, but they don't want to teach accurate history. They just want to push their bias onto people. So they'll quote something like, Frederick Douglass said, what is the 4th of July to a slave? And it's like, but are you looking at the whole nuance of history? Are you looking at through his whole perspective? Are you looking at the purpose of the speech and all the other stuff that he said? Like the Constitution is good. He respects the founders. He respects our holiday. He thought it was a good thing. And even the fact that he had the respect to wait on the 5th to deliver it and didn't crap on the holiday on the 4th, like so many people did, a couple days ago. So they don't want to teach factual history, they want to teach their distorted view of it, their distorted interpretation of it. So anytime someone says, we just want to teach accurate history, we just want the truth, that teacher that I played for you guys, and she referred to as people just want to learn the truth. I don't know if in that clip, but she, go watch the whole thing. So they're like, these kids are smart. They just want to learn the truth. We just want to teach them the truth. But you said it's your lens of how you view the world. That's speak your truth thing. Not everybody has a truth. Like there's one person who's the truth, and that's Jesus. Like there's your version, there's my version, there's what objectively happened. But if you're admitting that you have a lens that you view the world, you have a bias. This opinion creates bias in other teachers. It's not, and it's you admire that. You think that's a feature, not a bug. Then how can you say it's about teaching accurate history when it's clearly distorted? So I want to read a little bit of this speech to you guys, Frederick Douglass's speech. Fellow citizens, there is no matter in respect to which people of the North have allowed themselves to be so ruinously imposed upon as that of the pro-slavery character of the Constitution. In that instrument, I hold there is neither warrant, license, nor sanction of the hateful thing, but interpreted as it ought to be interpreted, the Constitution is a glorious liberty document. Read its preamble, consider its purposes. Is slavery among them? Is it at the gateway? Or is it the temple? It is neither. So again, please go read that speech. It is a great speech. People will reference it. So, I mean, the man's not infallible, but I think it's interesting that this man that so many people look up to on, both sides of the aisle, I think, but I don't know, maybe, why they did attack a Frederick Douglass statue, last year during the summer though. But he had this opinion in 1852. So before they even ended slavery, actually a big chunk of his speech, he's talking about the Fugitive Slave Act, where they're going across the country to take people. And he talked about the evils of that. So he had like legitimate reasons to be like upset, but he still defended the Constitution. So it's interesting to me that a man during that time uplifted the Constitution. Is like, no, that it is not a pro-slavery document, and other people can interpret it other ways. But if you, in a simple reading, no, nothing about it is pro-slavery. Yet we will have people who will say tooth and nail that everything, our whole entire documents, our founding, everything is based in racism. The teacher said it was literally the building blocks, and obviously not literally, because she would have meant figuratively. I'm saying that wrong, but So let's go on and listening to what Senator Rumstead said.
Absolutely, the truth should be told. When I was in school, it was told. All of those things are told. Here's a few things that were not told, okay? And critical race theory, they just changed the name. So we're not teaching that because we changed the name, ha, ha, ha. Here's what they're teaching, and it's coming here. In North Carolina, they had middle school students forced to stand up to the class and apologize to their students for their privilege. In Buffalo schools, they taught all the students that white people perpetuate systemic racism and are guilty of implicit racial bias. Elementary school in Manhattan sorted all the students by race and mandatory classroom exercises. Lastly, a head teacher in Manhattan was caught on tape acknowledging the curriculum for his school teaches white students are inherently evil and saying that they are demonizing white people for being born. Now, that wasn't being taught. That's new. They're getting this stuff into the schools. Is it happening in Michigan? Yes. Do they call it a different name and say, oh, we're not teaching that? Yes. This is one of the most destructive, racist, horrific things in the most diverse society this world has ever known, the United States of America, where we need to come together. They're dividing students by race and hate like this nation has never seen, and it's got to stop.
So he listed off, if I would have known that what he said was great, if I thought he was going in the direction of like about to mention that critical race theory is based on a critical theory, which is a Marxist ideology, but that wasn't mentioned in the panel. And I wish I would have said that. But it's really easy to find out. I wonder what do Democrats do when that obvious information is like discussed? Like, when I talk to people about it, they try to do a workaround, and it turns out that they're pro-Marxism. And some people are for it, so they don't care in that regard. But there's a lot of normal, independent, maybe even would be Republican and they're just kind of Democrat name only, it's just a traditional thing, sort of. If you would talk to these people and let them know like the roots and behind it and how it can really be destructive toward our way of life in America. I did a really big presentation. Like I had a youth Bible study, and I taught about critical race theory. I talked about the 1619 Project, and sort of all of these things encompassing why they're trying to destroy America, to have a big bad light of America, to destroy all these institutions, and our part of that also is destroying our Judeo-Christian values as well, in how there is a kind of a shadowy system of like the wanting to bring socialism, communism into the country. And I gave a lot of different references. I talked about how if you in other countries, how that destroys Christianity, how they'll be, I talked about this book, Tortured for Christ. If you haven't read it, go read it. It's a very tearjerker, will inspire you and all kinds of stuff. But there's an entire plan there. This is seriously, I know everyone's talking about it, and I hope you guys aren't sick of talking about it, because I think it's the most important thing going on right now. Some Republican leadership is like, we're going to talk about, well, we're the party of taxes. That I want my taxes to be low, don't get me wrong, but there's people who got their taxes, more money back on their taxes during the Trump age, and they didn't realize it. And they didn't repay him for it either, or repay Republicans for it. I'm not saying they shouldn't still do that, but they have to realize where the battles are. And this is a really big battle. And this will engage parents. It is engaging parents, and everyone's really concerned about this, and they should be. So you heard what Senator Runstead said. And so this is what Senator Hollier is saying.
No, what I hear in schools is that Black kids, like me, are disproportionately put out of school, that we are suspended at higher rates, that we are put into advanced placement classes at lower rates. When we talk about what is actually happening, if you look at it, it is racism. Our country has had racist issues from its founding. And we all know that. There's no disputing that. When we talk about the levels of equity, maybe just now are we even getting close to it? And that requires acceptance. We are not in a space where we are getting there. And when someone like my colleague can bring out 4 or 5 examples across the entire country, it just goes to show you how rare it is. But also, as you look at the systems, Black children in schools are disproportionately negatively impacted by the systems. That's what systemic racism is about. It's not about prejudice. Systems. It's not about some teacher or some person saying some racist thing. It is about systems that disproportionately make it more difficult for Black people to be successful, for brown people to be successful.
Okay, so a few things. He totally gaslighted on Runstead, because he named a couple examples, real examples, and they're not alone. More stuff comes out every day. There's a big story that just broke about stuff that teachers are being forced to say that I just saw like before I was prepping for the show, so it's not gonna make it in today, but more stuff. There's so much stuff that comes out every day. So Runstead said a couple of examples, and he's like, well, you can quote like 2 or 3 examples. There's like 5 people trying to get their word in on a TV show, sir. He only had time for a couple examples. There are far more. We could bring in, pack out the studio, which we weren't in the studio, but of parents who have examples. And I'm sure there's people who could name some stuff in this state too, because like I said in my segment, are you going to walk into a classroom and is it going to say critical race theory 101? No, but those principles that are taught in that, obviously they're here in Michigan, and he displayed it himself. Like I said, people who express this ideology, who defend it, they're already giving into it. So he talked about disparities from Black children who are kicked out of school, who are suspended in school, and who place at lower. They're not placed into as many advanced classes. First of all, a lot of Black kids go to school with other Black kids, and they may have a different mix of like teachers and other students and stuff, but. So I don't think it's really the problem that you think it is as far as the racism aspect there, but who are you holding accountable for the racist system? Because if you're saying they're not being put in advanced classes, first of all, where's your evidence that racism is the root? Where's the evidence for that? And FYI, I did reach out to his office this morning. I sent an email to them, and granted, I don't have a huge like channel right now, so maybe they might not have seen it, or maybe they thought it would have been just better to ignore me. But I said I was on Let It Rip last night, and I was on the panel. We didn't get a chance to go back and forth, and I just wanted to know, does he have any evidence that any of this is rooted in racism? And does he? Because just because you see something that's a disproportionate effect doesn't mean that that someone with a racist intention held you down. When do we ever hold people accountable for their individual actions? Like, that's really the danger when you talk about equality versus equity, because equality is like, hey guys, guess what? We all have the same opportunity out there. We can take advantage of what we want. We're all protected equally under the law and other stuff, which I guess people will debate that. But like in principle, it seems that we all have equal the chance to go fulfill our dreams, pursuit of happiness, we have our protections, etc. Like we live in a pretty equal society. But equity looks and says, oh, there's disproportionate effects of things. So we have to try to fix that. But there's no way that you can always fix that, because people are too vastly different. The only way that you can create true equity in that sense, to force everything to be equal, is if you start oppressing someone else. There's just too many variables at play, including human behavior, human decisions that they decide to make. So does he have any evidence that there's racism there? And who is responsible for those racist, disproportionate outcomes? And if it's in everything you said, what happens in the schools, it sounds like you're alleging that it's the teachers, the administrators, are the ones, the school boards, the unions, are they all the ones who are racist? That kind of seems like the obvious assumption that you're saying, right? And I don't know if he really thought that out too deeply, or if that was just like a, I don't know, talking point sort of thing, or if he genuinely believes that there are racist people who you can hold accountable. See, that's the problem with everyone talking about systems. And it's just a blanket. You keep talking about systems like it's a blanket thing, but who creates those systems? Who participated in those systems? You heard me chime in and said, when he kept going on, I was like, what, Democrat systems? Because there's so many people you can blame for Chicago, but how about the people who've run it for a long time? A lot of these cities have, city councils that are extraordinarily diverse and have been over them for a very long time. Are we going to hold those people accountable? Probably not, because a lot of them have a D next to their name. So we talk about systems to ignore the fact that even with history, obviously there's evil, racist things in our history that people decided to do things that were extremely awful. But there are people who have had particular ideologies, and we can kind of look and hold them accountable. Like, we can talk about how Democrats were the party of slavery, that Democrats were the ones who had the Jim Crow laws, and fought against civil rights and so on. But talk about inaccurate history. Well, inaccurate history, they're the ones who try to make up the party switch myth to not take accountability for that. So so the systems thing is just a blanket to not hold people accountable. Like, if you want to think critical, if you want to get down to the root of all these issues, keep asking questions and find out who is accountable, who made the policies, but they don't want to do that. Like Ben Shapiro always says when he talks about systemic racism and so on, inherent bias, he's like, show me a law or some kind of principle or what that is truly racist, and I will go fight it together with you. But you have to show me where the racism is. You can't just blanket say stuff and expect them to go, oh yeah, and just have the white people apologize and the black people go, yeah, that's why I got kicked out of school, because my principal is a racist. No. Maybe it's because you're selling drugs. That's a real example, by the way. So there were some kids who were upset, like reflecting last year, trying to say that a principal of mine was racist. And they were talking about how this kid got kicked out of school and how unfair it was. And my sister was friends with them, and they're just like, she was just saying like, they're my friends, but they got what they deserved. So So there are reasons people's actions, individual actions play a role. And back to the subject of equity, I was thinking about how he complained about advancement classes, because he said if you look at it, it's racism. That's what he said. I don't think that's true. But the problem with equality and equity is there's too many variables. So my house, not in my house, but my family, my immediate family, 7 kids, 1 boy, 6 girls. I think someone will probably get triggered if I'm wrong, but I think I was the only one who really was in a lot of advanced classes, and everyone got good grades. I got the best grades, and it's not because I was the one who could pick up everything the fastest. I was very diligent about my work. I was very, I don't want to say obsessive. I don't think it was like that, but I was studious. I wanted to succeed. I had a goal. I wanted to be valedictorian. And when I couldn't reach valedictorian, I'm like, I at least want to be in the top 10. That was my goal. I had siblings who didn't care about that kind of stuff. I had siblings who if they weren't so interested in the school stuff, they were kind of lazy with their, academic, studies. Now, when they learned other things, I'll just say it was my brother. When he found his passion in cooking, he was very studious in that, went to Dorsey schools, graduated. But other stuff like in school, like he liked art and stuff, but like he just wouldn't like really apply himself in other ways because he was just kind of bored. We all grew up in the same house. My parents wanted us all to do well and all get all straight A's and stuff, or like a B here and there. But we all respond differently. We all learn differently. We're all pretty intelligent people, but we're not all interested in quite in the same things. We all have very similar interests, but it's not all quite the same. Not everyone cared about math and science as much. And I can't say, there's some fascinating things in it. And I can't say that I like totally did so much, but I wanted to succeed. It was important to me to nail all that stuff, to have the best grades. So I'm a totally different we're all very similar, but I'm still very different than my siblings, and we all had very different outcomes. And that's in a family. That's in a family where we're all taught the same values. We all have the same parents, 2 parents who loved each other, took us to church 3-4 times a week, but we have vastly different outcomes. So if you can have vastly different outcomes within a family, everyone learning the same thing. We all have different life experience, different feelings, and etc. But all like in the microcosm, it's all pretty similar. The same environment. I mean, we all pretty much lived together, and people didn't start moving out until like 2014 and stuff. And we were all like, and a lot of us were adults still together, and a lot of us still live together. So it was pretty much the same environment, but we're so many different people. So if that is the case, how are you going to pull off equity? How are you going to pull off equity unless you do things like Christina's doing too well, so we need to docket her grades so she can get the same as everyone else, or we need to make adjustments. It's like, no, they can just work harder, or they can change their perspective and try to catch up to what I'm, but we're not the same, and it's okay. It's okay. Like, I'll apply myself in this other way. And when I was talking to my baby sister about this, she's like, well, I was in advanced art classes. So it's like, then we start talking about how art just doesn't kind of have the same value today. And we got off on Hunter Biden and stuff. But I mean, it's kind of a different topic. But there's other ways that people try to apply themselves. My sister Angelina, man, she loved her health studies class. She'd come home and she talked about the things that she was fascinated in. And she talked about, like, she was in a weightlifting class. She had an advanced weightlifting class, I think. And she was studious and worked out and did stuff in that way. But I don't think she was as interested, as other topics and categories of like the, basic stuff that you learn. And it's not, nobody, failed or anything like that. We all did pretty well. but you're not going to have an equal outcome. And equity sees disparity as something bad. And there's a root, and it's like racism or something. When the truth is people are just different and people make different choices. I made a choice when I would come home on Friday night on the weekends to knock out my homework. I would make a choice to read ahead in my anatomy class. I would make a choice when my, science class was too boring that I wanted to challenge myself and go to the advanced class. And that was really more of a teacher problem that I could have just got a different teacher. My advanced science class was pretty hard. We make those choices and they make different choices and people are different. But this whole equity ideology is crazy. So this state senator saying there's all these disparities, I told my mom what he said. And I was told, because everyone asked how the segment went, and I let them know. And so everyone was just like baffled by Senator Holloway's, what he said. And so when I told my mom, she just looked, and she's like, "Some of them is just bad kids." And she's got this like country Detroit accent. It's pretty cute. A lot of people I guess people coming from the South, and they just kind of brought their accents into their kids, I guess. But she's right. Are we not gonna like hold accountable or even like think about the fatherless home issue like in the Black community and how that can affect outcomes with children and how the mom has to play so many different roles, which it's hard to do if you're one person, how men and women really need a father. Even in some people have tried to push back against those stats, and they're like, well, they consider even a fatherless home even if you're like maybe in the life but you're not there. Like, okay, that still even shows you, even if you're like divorced or something, or if you never got married and you're still in their life but you're not like a traditional family unit, that still has a tremendous outcome and impact on your kids. Sorry if that triggers anyone, but it didn't prove the point that people pushing back thinks it proves. And then I was talking about it with some of my sisters, like some of these people have father figures, and sometimes they got to wait till they like get in a sport, and then there's a coach, and the coach is like, stern with them, and they get sort of like that authority figure there. And I'm like, yeah, but nowadays they want to make sports so wimpy that you don't probably get the same sort of like manly feel from your coach that you might have gotten back in the day. There's a young woman I brought on my show, Ronquel Baugh. She wrote a book. You see, I don't have a picture of it because she brought the hard copy, but she told her story about having an abortion. And so I'll try to keep it a long story short, but in her book that she talked about relationships that she had. She was really into this one young man, but he didn't really care for her, but she couldn't quite see it. She ended up getting pregnant, and she ended up having an abortion, which she, regrets and acknowledges that was a life. And that at the time she just wanted a clean slate. But even to this day, she's still like affected by that. If someone even talks about abortion or miscarriage, she it physically makes her stomach upset. So I was like, I've never heard of that. And so her story was just like amazing, just going through all that, her life story. And then she got with someone else who cared very little for her too. And so, in my mind, when I was reading her book, I'm just like, why would someone do this? Do all these things? And then she later explained, she's like, she had a mother and she loved her mother, but she didn't have a father figure. And a lot of the relationship she was trying to build in her, she was always yearning for that male relationship and trying to fill in that hole. And so earlier this year, my dad had his 50th anniversary of being saved, being a Christian. And we had like a revival. It was about a week-long revival for him. And so every night we had a church member get up and like testify. And so she said a beautiful testimony and talked about how being in the ministry and seeing, having that father figure of my dad, of having like a responsible spiritual figure who cares about her as an individual, keep her on track, discipline her when she needs, like we'll correct her, I guess is a better word, when she needed to be corrected, but cared about her, wanted to see her advance. Like that was something that she didn't have in her life. And she also talked about how she watched him be a good father to his children and how that healed a lot of things in her. And it was like a tearjerker, but I said that to say there's a lot of people who do not realize the effects that people can have of not having that two-parent household. And it can come out in all sorts of ways. But we do know there's, so many likelihoods of like being on drugs, going to jail, not finishing high school, and so on if you don't have a father in the home. So like when we look at some of those issues in the Black community, we can't like acknowledge that maybe there's some kind of root cause there. And it's not that the teachers are racist and they don't want to put you in advanced classes. Do you qualify for those advanced classes? Because I did, but not everyone else in my family would have or did. They could have probably, but they didn't. So just because you see a disparity doesn't mean the teachers are racist. And I don't assume if we pressed him that they would think that or say that. But that's the implication. Because when you say there's racism, who is that's a racism is a problem of the heart. So who's responsible for that? You are accusing an individual, and maybe a collective of individuals, but individuals nonetheless, that they are committing some kind of egregious, sin of, and really it's very stupid too. Like racism is lazy and stupid. It just is. So, but who are you pointing the finger towards? You can't just say this the system in racism is the root of this, but who is on the other line of that? Who's responsible for that? So Senator Hollier, are you saying teachers are racist? and that is my 2 cents about that. So you can watch the whole segment from Let It Rip on their site. It was there. My sister sent me a link this morning. And so I think I did well. I did wish I could talk a little bit more about it. For those of you who are local, I will be talking at the Lakes Area Tea Party event on Monday about it. They have someone else who's going to talk about it too. I'm going to be talking a lot about the media bias and the media spin with it. And I need a whole lot more time than what I'm going to get, but I will try my best. There's just so much gaslighting, like Senator Hollier gaslighted a bit with Runstead, and even like, the anchors a bit. They're like, it's not being in Detroit. I guarantee you that people have that mindset. And you know what? Do you remember when last year when people were like, oh, there's more Black people who are dying from the pandemic. And then they're like, so we're going to give the nurses and the doctors diversity training or implicit bias training. So the governor is implying that our nurses and doctors are racist. And because of their racism, that is attributed to Black people dying of COVID. But it's interesting that people want to blame all the deaths on Trump, or did want to blame it all on Trump. Like he's responsible for 500,000 deaths. Like, no, well, Gretchen Whitmer just kind of implied it was the nurses and the doctors who let the Black people die. I mean, isn't that why they're taking the training? Because they're not giving them the proper care? Like that's the implication. That Gretchen Whitmer thinks nurses are racist? That's the implication. Now, instead of saying things like Black people are a little heavier, and there's some that was one of the comorbidities, if you were heavier, you're going to have a harder time with a respiratory virus, and that was just the truth. And don't you all think it's weird that the CDC did not push getting more active and taking care of your body during the whole thing? Like they didn't mention it toward what was the end of last year? They were talking about, by the way, it's like, well, we knew this from the beginning. So why weren't you doing like, they should have had like workout campaign videos like they did with other stuff, like as much as like commitment that they had with the mask up, why not like work out while you know, are home? They could have brought back Michelle Obama. She could have been like marching in place or something. That's what my mom does to lose weight. She just marches in place while she watches TV. So why didn't the CDC do that? Is it because they didn't want to offend people with fat pride or what? Like, it was so bizarre. It was so bizarre. So bizarre. So I'm off my soapbox about Let It Rip. Go watch it for yourselves. Speaking of the CDC, and COVID and stuff, Pfizer decided that they were going to try to get the FDA approval for a booster shot. I guess that so more people will have a third shot. So yeah, Pfizer and BioNTech said that a third COVID-19 booster dose given about 6 months after the second shot improves vaccine efficacy against new coronavirus variants, that this is backed by initial data from their study on booster shots. So there's all these variants and they want you to go get another shot, which is interesting because there's a lot of people who didn't end up getting the second shot. And that's a concern for the White House, so much so that they said they're gonna, for the rest of like the summer, they're gonna start sending people door to door. On TikTok, people are doing videos about it. They're called Jehovah's Witnesses or something, kind of like Jehovah's Witnesses. So it's a bit funny. There's some funny ones, but don't knock at my door. Don't knock at my door. We deserve some privacy. People, if they want it, they can have it. You're just bothering people now. No. Like, go away. Go away. So this other thing I wanted to talk about. So yesterday, might have been the day before. I think it was the day before. There's this comic book creator who did a video. One of my friends stitched his video. I ended up seeing it. And so it's a comic book creator. He is upset because apparently only conservatives are seeing his content, as he had some words. So I decided, when I saw his video, I decided to do a side-by-side video. So I will show you the video, give a little bit of background on him. And then I ended up putting on Instagram and someone tagged him and he replied. So I want to talk about this. Comic books are just such a bad medium right now. It has so much bad ideology. Like the Captain America book, right before like 4th of July, said something about not believing in the American dream anymore. I don't want to talk too much about that, but I guess Ta-Nehisi Coates, like, why would you have him write Captain America? And he's going to write a Superman movie too, but he has such a nihilistic view of the country. So why would you give him Captain America? Other than the fact that these people just don't like our country very much, or they don't think that it deserves to be liked, rather. I guess. And that's a view that a lot of young people have. I talked about this the other day. Like 64% of like 18 through 24 aren't proud of the country, I think. Daily Caller did a report on it. So anyway, here's this video.
Hey, yo, Black TikTok, stop scrolling. I need you right now. TikTok done lost their damn minds. They keep feeding all of my positive black imagery to conservative TikTok. Now, as a comic book publisher of titles like this, really? And an app with images like this, why do they keep feeding me to all those people? So if you're black, please interact with this post. We need followers who appreciate black excellence, because I'm one of the biggest publishers in the country, and all I get seen by is people who hate this kind of content. And characters like these deserve better.
Yeah, so that's Manuel Godi. I don't know. I'm not positive that's how you pronounce his name, but he is over a Black Sands Entertainment. And so he says he's one of the top publishers, at least he said in the video. On their website, they say that they're the top black publisher. Quite a bit of difference, because I don't know how many niche black publishers there are. Comics, even like the big comic book books like Batman, Superman, like DC, Marvel stuff, are being outsold by like manga now. And I think the reason for that is because the comic books have decided to just embrace the wokeness and just really dumb ideologies. I think Marvel maybe more right now, at least from what I'm hearing, more than DC. And that maybe some of that is like Disney's influence. And Disney has so much money, I don't think they care about the comic books too much. At least not their comic book fans. The comic books are just a way for people to shout out their like social justice nonsense that through their medium. I've talked about this before. Jordan Peter, I have a specific video on this if you want to check this out. But they had Captain America fighting like the Red Skull, and the Red Skull had like 12 rules for chaos or 10 rules for chaos or something, and it was a riff off of Jordan Peterson's like 12 rules for life. And so basically they were calling him Jordan Peterson, and people try to pretend like, well, we weren't doing that, but if that's what you see, then maybe you have a problem. It's like, no, dude, like clearly that's what you were doing. It's very obvious. It's very obvious. And so even like the Red Skull, the men that they reached out to, I was really offended. He made jokes about it, and they made merchandise, made money for charity, whatever. They didn't care too much. I was offended because I'm like, they're not just attacking Jordan Peterson, who is like a legit person in his field. But they're also attacking people who would seek, who look up to him, who seek help from him, who have gotten like professional help from him. And they're calling him Jordan Peterson like a super magical Nazi. And they're calling the people who he has helped through the years and who gravitate toward him, they're calling them Nazis. So I took more offense to it than he did. But that's where like comic books have been going for a while. And that's, and DC is bad some of the stuff too, but I think Marvel's probably really bad because I think the movies maybe make so much money that they don't care so much about their books. I mean, for example, at one point in time, they weren't even like really doing X-Men stuff because Marvel didn't own the rights to use X-Men. So they're just like, we're not doing any books right now. And I don't know if it's a strong arm them or what. Because 20th Century Fox had it, but they did buy Fox, so now they have all of them. So maybe Disney doesn't feel pressed that they have to make good content. They just want to push their ideology, and it's really, really bad. But in manga, they just care about making their stories. Like our first world problems are so stupid. And they just have these stories with their characters, and usually they'll have a progression, like beginning, middle, end, and maybe when the story ends, they'll have a spin-off. Like there was a Naruto story. They finished Naruto. He had a full arc, boy who wanted to be Hokage, like the leader of their village, who was an outcast. They finished that story, and then they went on after that. Now they have Boruto, which is a story about his son. So, but American comic books, they keep recycling stuff. People's like the same age. Batman's like the same age, but now he's got like a kid who's like, I don't know how old Damien is, but I think they've messed up the ages before. So, and when they have to reset to start all over again, they just reset it. And so there's a really different format with, American comics, a lot of American comics versus like DC comic. I mean, like manga and stuff, but they're not wrapped up in all the wokeness like America is. So I think a lot of people are gravitating towards those stories than the big ones. And I think guys like this who have their ideology comes first is really a clear demonstration of the problem. So I did put this on Instagram, and someone tagged them, and he did respond. So he said, you can argue all you want, but the reality is $1 spent on ads targeting conservatives is $1 lost. I don't care if you are the exception, market-wise. The vast majority of conservatives in the United States are white and overwhelmingly racist. Numbers don't lie. I got years of analytics to back up my claim. Now maybe how he presents his niche market of what the comics are about is why people don't, the vast majority of the world isn't going to read them. Maybe that's why. But he makes a lot of assumptions. Like I'm a black conservative. It's offensive that he's like, oh, conservatives in my feed. So Black Twitter, please save me, because there's conservatives in my feed, and I don't want people to just look at my stuff who are conservative, because they're not going to buy it. So I please help me, Black Twitter. And I'm just like, I'm a black person, and I'm a conservative. And as you can see in my video, I have a lot of comic books. I don't really read them because I don't really nowadays, because I don't like the stories. But I have a lot, and I have my dad. He learned to read because his dad brought home some books, and he wanted to go to school so he could know what they said. And my grandpa, he was just like, "Oh, I think Gino will like this," and he bought them. And then my dad wanted to go to school to be educated, to know what they said. And my dad loved comic books, and he grew up on them, and he bought them for his kids because he liked the values that were in them, just doing right for right's sake. The stories are like not like what they used to be. It was really simple. Like you had to just stick up for what was right, not for you, not for yourself, just for the greater good. Personal responsibility, self-sacrifice, a lot of things that are like, biblical values that you take from Christianity. He's a pastor too. Like the church would go see like movies together, opening night. As a matter of fact, the banner for our church on Facebook for a while was a picture of us at the movie theater. And then finally someone was like, maybe we should change it, because we're all like in Marvel shirts. So we did change that, but we were all pretty much into it. So the fact that, and we're all pretty conservative. So the fact that this comic book creator would be like, I need black people to save me, to help me with my algorithm, because all these conservatives are watching it. He makes the assumption that black people aren't going to be conservative. And that's a fair, it's not even a fair assumption, because a lot of black people are conservative. But they just don't realize that they are not Democrat. if you question them, because you know what, my oldest sister and my dad didn't realize they were conservatives or they were Republicans until they there was a teacher at my sister's high school who went like through like what the parties are and what they believe and stuff. And my sister's like, I'm a conservative Republican. And she went home and said, Dad, I'm a conservative Republican. He's like, what? And she's like, Dad, you are too. And then he's a rational guy. He just thought about it and like, yeah, that's true. And then he was listening to Rush Limbaugh. So, and he wasn't too fond of a lot of this stuff that Democrats were doing anyway. So it wasn't like a hard break. But there's a lot of people who have conservative values, especially since the black community is so religious, and they may be Democrat, but they're still very conservative. So what he said was super offensive. Not super offensive in the fact that I was upset about it. I mean, I was motivated enough to make a video, obviously, and to talk about it. Am I going to lose sleep over it? No, but I think it's sad that people have this ideology. And what's crazy to me is he may not think that's his fan base and where he's going to make his money, but why would you why would you be so rude to people who could be potential customers? That's something I don't understand. That I see repeatedly from comic book writers, directors, so on. It's not just them, but other people too. Like the producer of like The Resident was arguing with me on Twitter because I said something like, "Oh, I didn't like this episode." Like, well, other people like it. I'm like, what? Don't you have like things to do? Like, and you're arguing with someone with a fan of the show, but I just didn't like your episode because I thought it wasn't well written, it wasn't well directed, the pacing, like there was a lot of things that I technically thought was wrong with it. But you're so offended. You're saying everyone else liked it that you had to try to invalidate my personal opinion, and I'm a viewer of your show. That's crazy to me. That is crazy to me. And I don't know why that is now becoming more of the industry standard and norm to just argue with people like that. And it's one thing to kind of correct the record or something like that, but some of these people are so rude. And they might be rude to their fans. So if I wasn't aware of this man. I wasn't aware of his comic books. I can tell you now that I certainly will not buy them. but he seems like no lost sleep over that. But there was someone else who wrote a comment under that comment, and I got to read it from my phone because how I'm viewing it, it'll be too tiny. But I thought that it was pretty sad. Actually, no, I saved it on a Word document so I could see it better. Aha. So this is the person who tagged him and how they found my page. So he said, "Thank you for replying back to this post. I wish we could have more of a dialogue on this subject. As a longtime conservative customer and nerd, your statement that my beliefs and love for America, I find your statements to be hurtful and to say the least. Clearly, I am considered a minority, half Black from my mother's side, if it matters. And love needs and geeks and gamers of all walks of life." I think it's supposed to be nerds and geeks and gamers of all walks of life. "Our country has been the best of the best when it comes to this subculture. And while we have political differences, they are just that, differences. The idea that my political and cultural beliefs make me a racist or hateful is to assign a falsehood to any and everyone who disagrees with you. I think you have a good product and great ideas. Sadly, you don't allow people like me and others to support you because you assign the worst prejudice to us and devolve into what is basically name calling. All people are hungry for great and heroic stories, not identity politics and leftist agendas. Those heroic stories do not need advertising dollars because the people will donate by advertising on their own dollars because it's good." So, I mean, what else is there to say? Like, and so this is someone who comes from mixed heritage. And man, I was on TikTok talking about this and the critical race theory stuff, and people were asking me questions. And one thing people were asking me, like, how is this going to affect mixed couples or mixed children? And some people were mixed, or they had mixed kids, or their grandmothers who had mixed, grandkids. And I'm like, I think the best thing we can do right now is to attack all this stuff. But it's so like, but the part of the premise of like critical race theory and stuff, well, first of all, they believe racism is everywhere. They believe it's very hard to get rid of. And why would white people want to get rid of it? They might think they want to get rid of it, but it's a system that's built to, benefit them. And at the same time, they don't want you to, they think it's like disrespectful to be colorblind or not to see color. Cartoon Network made a video about how you should not see color. I mean, how it's wrong to say don't see color. So a world like what you would think the end goal, the end game of like people like Frederick Douglass and so on, who realize that we are all great sinners in the eyes of Christ, and slave owner and slave alike, and we are all truly just, we can come together on certain things, and like him and George Washington Carver, other people believe that something like religion could bring us together, but maybe it's like other things. It could be our collective American identity and our respect for our values overall, or even just respect for you could have respect for Judeo-Christian values without actually adhering to the religion and those particular principles. Well, to the principles, but not to the religion and the Constitution and whatever. But people don't want us to be united on those things. They want us to feel so devoted to our race, to who we sleep with, how we can identify today and identify tomorrow, and not be united on the things that truly matter. And we're in a bad spot with that, I guess. But that's why it's so important for people to push back against it, to fight against it. And I said, everyone needs to be talking about this stuff, and everyone needs to be showing examples. And if it's possible, maybe you need to pull your kids from school, and homeschool them on your own or whatever. I said one thing you probably could do, people could like collectively, I don't know, hire a babysitter to teach all that stuff to maybe like 5 kids or something. If you need to do that, hire like a au pair, a nanny or something. I don't know. But do what you need to do for your kids. Because this is a really evil ideology, but We'd be foolish to think it's not in the classrooms, and we'd be foolish to think it's not just something that's in the schools. Someone told me, close to me, I got a new job recently, and they told me about some of the stuff that they had to learn in their diversity trainings and stuff, or they're just basic trainings. That stuff is in your jobs, for sure. It's in our military. It's in our military contractor stuff. Raytheon had like a big diversity training sort of thing that was problematic. And these teachers unions are learning it. But you know, when these people learn that stuff and they graduate from high school, college, or whatever, you think that just goes away and they just go into the real world and they're a normal person? No, they're still indoctrinated. And then they're your doctors, and then your lawyers, and then they're your therapists. I played a video from the Washington Post with a trauma therapist talking about white guilt and how you need to and how, you know, it's discovering, I guess, that your races is so traumatic and stuff. And I'm like, which is interesting, because when people try to tell me that they have, you know, generational trauma from slavery, I'm just like, that's not a thing, or it shouldn't be a thing. And if you claim that you have it, go see a therapist. But what if that's the therapist that they see? You're crazy, and so is your therapist. Where do you go from there? Where do you go from there? I don't know the answer. But Black and Sands Entertainment, he didn't reply to that person, and I replied to him, and I said, because he said white conservatives are overwhelmingly racist, and I said, sir, how do you think you're coming off as a racist, someone who's extraordinarily prejudiced? And so this is probably the last thing I say about it, and forgive me if it's not, but it's so interesting to me how people on the left will try to say the Republicans are the party of racism, Republicans are so racist, conservatives so racist, or whatever. Please tell me last year, who were all the people confessing their white guilt and their collective racism? I know there were some Republicans who fed into that nonsense a little bit. But at large, who were all the white people confessing? Were they conservative, or were they were they leftist? Were they Democrats, or were they Republican? They were Democrats. So if the Democrats all came out and said, hey, we're all racist, maybe we should just believe them. And they might be like, no, all the white people are racist. That includes the racist white Republicans. They said they're not. You can have a back and forth dialogue about it, why you think that they are and they're not. But the point is that you admitted that you're the racist. So you've already confessed your white guilt, your racism. So why are you pointing the finger at Republicans like they're the racist when you admitted that you yourself are a racist? So they're clearly the party of racism because they said that they were. They all said that they were. They all said that they were. Oh, gosh. Guys, what are we going to do? What are we going to do about the world today? Really, really wacky. So last thing I want to talk about really quick is that Tucker Carlson said that he was being spied on by the NSA. The NSA kind of had a denial that was worded in a particular way. And some people were like, okay, they're saying he wasn't an interest to be targeted, but that doesn't mean he didn't get swept up in some kind of surveillance. And so people were kind of mocking Tucker like, oh, that's not true. That they denied it, blah, blah, blah. And so Tucker was like, no, we have proof. And there was a whistleblower. And they said that not only do they have my information, that they were blackmailing me, trying to shut me down or whatever, but they also leaked my correspondence to someone in the press. So this story just got a lot worse, right? Because sometimes you can get caught up, like if you're a person of interest in something, like, and so, but it turned out that Axios reported a story that Tucker Carlson was trying to get an interview with Vladimir Putin. And honestly, besides the fact that people have conspiracy theories that Tucker is still some kind of Russian puppet or something, I don't know. It's not really a big deal because, journalists have interviews with world leaders. But and then the story's like said like people familiar with the story, reported. It's like, okay, who's your source? So if he got caught up in some kind of sweep, like I don't know if you're talking about Russians and something, and maybe there's like a some kind of general sweep or whatever, people get captured in or whatever, and then they unmasked Tucker or something, and then they leaked it. That's really bad. But we don't know all the things. I'm not aware if NSA has come out further with an implication about them leaking it, but Axios did have it. So Tucker's story seems like it's adding up. It should not surprise anyone because Biden and Obama, they spied on people. That's what they did. That's what they did. They did it while in office, and they did it out the door with Michael Flynn. It's not a new thing. So you shouldn't be surprised if you voted for him thinking that things would be different. Shame on you. But Tucker's talked about it, and other people have talked about it too. I advise you guys to look a little deeper in it, but it is interesting. It is fascinating. But I do have to now wrap things up. If you guys would be so good dears, please go to blacktnews.com. You can support me if you like what I'm doing, if you appreciate what I'm doing. I'm asking you to support. You can go to blacktnews.com/donate to support, or you can do so by PayPal or Cash App. It's, viewing at the ticker across the screen. It has been the whole time. You can do so supporting that way. Please check out merchandise that I have. Like I said, I got a new one. There we go. Be better, not bitter. I think that's a good one. I think that's a good one. And I got more stuff that actually has my logo, and there will be some more stuff coming out. Of course, we got, the cool like Trump stuff. We get anti-Biden stuff. Defeat Joe Biden, denounce white supremacy with a list of his racist stuff on the back. And I'm not the victim you're looking for. So that's just some of the stuff you guys can check out on my website. So please go there and visit. You guys are great. Thank you for being part of this conversation. I will have I didn't end up doing my TikTok show last Saturday. I will have one tomorrow. It's my nephew's birthday today, and we are going to celebrate tomorrow. So it probably will not be live. It may be live, we'll see, but I'll figure that out, but I will view it, and it will premiere live. And you guys, if it is a live premiere, you guys can still interact with it, and I'll interact with it too. And you guys can comment and watch it live and so on. So, the topic is going to be some of my favorite TikToks that I have done. I've done over 300 videos. It's pretty crazy, but, you can tune in tomorrow at 7:30, PM Eastern time. To watch Let's TikTok about it, and we'll have the full news back on Monday. But keep checking the site because we'll have other stuff on the social medias. Follow me on all the platforms. God bless you guys, and I'll see you next time.